Hi there. Okay, I'm going to tell you why I think Trump will win big. I want you to think about it. Why do I think that? I'm going to give you five reasons. Think why. First, I want to point out that the incumbent always has the advantage. Always. I voted in every election, presidential election, since 1972. So let me just remind you about who did not get reelected as the incumbent. First was Gerald Ford in 1976, but he'd been appointed, when Nixon stepped down from Watergate. So don't count that. Jimmy Carter, he was a one-term president. But there were a lot of things going on in the country at that time. And he talked about the malaise, and the big one was everyday praying because of the hostages in Iran. And it just seemed so weak and feckless. And then he had that rescue mission that failed, and he pulled back. It just, not good. So Ronald Reagan won. And then George H.W. Bush. And I'm very, very familiar with that 1992 election because that's when Bill Clinton won, but we have the complicating factor of Ross Perot. And he got something like 15% of the vote. So it's not, he probably pulled a lot of votes away from George H.W. Bush. But in every other case since then, the incumbent has always won. So that's extremely powerful. So don't discount that. By the way, speaking of that election, I just saw on Amazon Prime Crashing the Party, and it was made in 2016, and it was about the 1992 election. And I was extremely involved in that. So it was kind of a trip down memory lane for me, all the people and all what was going on at the time. As you know, I worked in Little Rock, Arkansas on the campaign, and then I served in Bill Clinton's administration. So there was a lot to say about that, but there was a big push to turn the Democratic Party back to the middle with the Democratic Leadership Council and other groups that were forming, and they sounded Republican, that platform that they have. What Bill Clinton ran on, it's pretty amazing. But it was recognized that after the losses in '84 with Walter Mondale, and then in '88 with Michael Dukakis, that Democrats, there was a fear that the Democratic Party could never get the presidency again. If you move that far from the middle, you're not going to win. So that is actually pretty interesting if you want to go back and see what happened to the Democratic Party and how they had to move back to the middle. Now, so I think that has relevance for today and what the Democratic Party is doing, that it could really make, if they lose big in November, that would give more power to the moderate Democrats and they could move the party back. But we'll see. You can't always go by the past. Certain things have changed. So we'll see how that goes. So anyway, that's one of the reasons. The incumbent always has the advantage. Now, here's one that seems very important to me. I haven't really heard other people talk about it, but why I think Trump will win big. And that is to think about who voted for Trump in 2016. Now, a lot of people will look at people with Trump derangement syndrome and say, oh, these people hate Trump, so there's no way he can win. This poll shows this poll shows that. But there's not a lot of people that I can see who voted for Trump in 2016 when really you were voting for an unknown. So people were taking a chance. Who would then now vote for Joe Biden instead in 2020? I mean, if there are cases of people like that, oh, they're going to be played up in the mainstream media, played up everywhere, every chance you get. But think of all the people. I mean, the whole walkaway movement started. Brandon Strzok, who voted for Hillary Clinton, was very upset when she lost. And then he started looking into it. He started this whole movement of people who are walking away from the Democratic Party. So you have all of those people. I mean, a lot of people who've changed their mind about Donald Trump. Because now Donald Trump has a record to run on. And that's got to make a difference. So it's my thought, as I look at this, that there's a lot of people who are moving from having voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016 who will now vote for Donald Trump in 2020. And the thing is, would this be captured by all the polls? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, those polls are so notoriously bad. Something's going on there. They're not good. When have they ever really been correct? It's pretty amazing. I mean, take when George H.W. Bush won in 1988. In the summer, Michael Dukakis, who lost, I don't know by what amount, but he definitely lost in the 1988 election. He was 17 points ahead of George H.W. Bush. And he lost in the summer. Because I remember, I was for Michael Dukakis, but whatever, I was for him. By the way, that was the only time I participated in a presidential poll. I was back when I had a landline, and I remember getting a call, and I was struck by how the questions were asked. They weren't asked just straightforwardly. There was like a bias in it. And I remember one of the questions, which I took great offense at, it was trying to get at if I was kind of bothered by the fact that he was Greek, he had a name like Dukakis. I can't remember what the question was, but that's how I took it. That, does he seem kind of weird to you? Or it was something weird like that. It's like, no, why are you asking me that? I thought, they're trying to get me to say, or trying to dig out, do I have some prejudice against Greek people? Or that he's from the Northeast? I don't know. But ever since then, I always thought, I want to know what the exact question is. And also, as many people have pointed out, a poll is going to be what that person felt at that moment. Like if you happen to just be kind of bugged at somebody, is very different than who you actually vote for when push comes to shove and you're actually at that ballot box. And also, do people even tell the truth? I mean, there's definitely some people who are afraid to say that they're for Trump. They're actually afraid. And given with all the lack of privacy, somebody calls you up, do some people, would they even say that they're for Trump? So I don't know. But I urge you, as I urge myself, don't be too worried about those polls. Look to other things. So when I look at how many people, and surprisingly, even since the COVID-19 stuff took off, so our economy dropped, we have all these problems, I've been seeing a lot of people on Twitter and elsewhere say they just decided in the last 4 months or so that they would vote for Trump. Huge number of people. I mean, one person, for example, that Leo Terrell, the one that's now off and on Hannity, and he was avidly not for Trump. And another thing I'm noticing, in addition to all the law and order stuff, that's huge. That's just huge. In talking to people, there's, among Democrats, there's a lot of people who are very upset about the cancel culture that's going on. They don't like it. that people will get fired because they say this or say that. Now, a lot of conservatives have known about that. And certainly people, I mean, that cancel culture has been there. That cancel culture, I saw it with the whole climate alarmism. It was shocking to me. You'd have these really good, serious scientists, and if they spoke out, because I looked at the arguments, pro and con, and studied it, they were smeared. And you can still see that now. If somebody comes up with anything that goes against that narrative, they try to stop it. Michael Schellenberger, all he's saying is that it's apocalypse never. It's not that serious. He still thinks climate, I mean, global warming is kind of a thing, but he doesn't like renewables. He's definitely for nuclear power. I'm listening to his book right now, and it's very good, very well written. But he had an article in Forbes, they took it down. Even Michael Moore with his documentary, which really dissed the renewables and showed how bad those were for the environment, as Michael Schellenberger also talks about, and as I have talked about. I have a video back where I discussed the problems with the Green New Deal. I mean, as a long time, I would call myself an environmentalist in that I want to preserve natural spaces. I want the beauty of the nature, if you will. And renewables just are horrible for the environment. So I know I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but that cancel culture has been around a long time. Maybe just a lot of people didn't realize it, and they would get people like, you're not for science, okay? So don't let them use that on you. We're not seeing that with this whole COVID thing. But anyway, that's a big factor. That's probably going to influence some people as well, because the left and the Democrats are so into the cancel culture. It's in academia right now. It's something that's been going on in college campuses for a long time, where any deviation in your speech is considered hate speech. It's really awful. And it kind of reminds me of the Cultural Revolution in China, where you have to have re-education camps and only certain things. I mean, it's George Orwell's 1984. I mean, he predicted this when he wrote his book. It's so much like that. So people are disturbed. So I think that'll have an effect. I don't quite know what that effect will be, but it's not going to make people not vote for Trump. So I think it's huge. There's a lot of new voters for Trump out there, and I just don't know how many. I don't see that there's a way to do it. So, and we already know that the voters for Trump are highly motivated to go out and vote. So, and then there was another one. Oh, here's another one, the economy. Historically, it's always been about the economy. That's one of the reasons why I think a lot of this COVID-19 stuff is trying to ruin the economy. They're trying to keep it going. But what has Trump done? He's brought back jobs in manufacturing, with the energy sector, decreasing all these regulations that were built up during the Obama years and prior. It's huge what he's done for the economy. So the economy will start going back up, and if nothing else, the stock market is. It's still much higher now than it was when Trump was elected. And that makes a difference to people. Do you really want it to just crash down again? And it will, if Biden's elected. With all those things they have in place, there's just no way. So the economy has always been important for election. That's why when I was working on the campaign, James Carville, he had like a whiteboard, and he had written, "It's the economy, stupid." That was very famous. But he wanted to keep the focus, because you can run a campaign on a whole bunch of issues, but if you stick to a few important themes, that's what people remember. So it was the economy, stupid, and then secondarily, it was about healthcare. Like, we need some reform in healthcare. But we weren't supposed to like have the campaign be about anything else. So the economy is doing very well. That's another reason. And then there's this interesting one, and I saw him on Lou Dobbs, but he's apparently been on Laura Ingraham. So let me tell you about this one guy. He is called Helmut Norpoth, Norpoth. And he has a model for primary elections. Like what happens in primary elections, he's been able to determine who's going to win in November. And it's a very powerful, and it's been correct, like some huge number. In 24 of 26 presidential elections, he looked back, I think, to 1912. And he says that right now, President Trump has a 91% chance of being reelected. Now, of course, the mainstream media and the left doesn't like that, and they try to downplay it, but he's been very successful. And what he does is something different. He looks at the enthusiasm and the voter turnout for primaries. And he calls it a powerful metric. He's a Stony Brook University political science professor. Helmut, Helmut, Norpoth, Norpoth. And you might say, well, he was 24 out of 26 presidential elections, so I was curious, what two did he get wrong? And one was the 1960 election of John F. Kennedy. Remember, that was the first time they had televised debates. So did that play a role? Because John F. Kennedy supposedly did much better, or looked better in the debates on television. And also the 2000 election of George W. Bush, he didn't call that. But then, think about it. That was basically a tie between him and Al Gore. Remember, it had to be decided by the Supreme Court. So, I don't consider that a failure of the model. But I want to remind you something that might make you feel better. On Election Day, and I remember this, many of you remember this, in 2016, because I voted for a president, or for Donald Trump. And that afternoon, I had a good cry. I thought, darn, it's not going to win. Because this is what these sites were saying. Now, Nate Silver has a site called 538, which is usually pretty accurate. He gave him a 29% chance of winning Donald Trump on the day of the election, a 29% chance. Now, that doesn't say a 0 chance. That just said, if you're going to lay money on it, he had a 29% chance. The New York Times, they gave Donald Trump a 15% chance. Idiots. Daily Cost, 8%. The Huffington Post, 1.7%. The Princeton Election Consortium, whatever that was, based on polls, I guess, 1%. That was election day. These vaunted institutions, that's why people were so shocked that Hillary Clinton lost. How could they get it so wrong? How could they get that so wrong? So when you hear all this stuff, don't worry about it. When you hear about these polls, don't worry about it. And now, I gotta tell you, with what I've seen with the whole climate alarmism and the mucking with the temperature data, what even NASA and NOAA have done with readjusting the temperature data. Tony Heller, by the way, if you don't listen to Tony Heller and subscribe to his channel, you need to do that. He's entertaining. He shows old headlines. He gives you good facts. Of all the people right now, he's probably the best to watch. And his subscribership is growing worldwide. He does great work. But anyway, so when I've seen that, because you think, really? How do they manipulate data like that? That's really, it's kind of shocking. It's very shocking. But they do it. And then with the COVID deaths, now how they're recorded, and even how many people get sick, You know, we've seen a lot of weird stuff there that looks odd. Not to mention the models were horrible and how much they projected. Does it really seem that out of line that these polls could be mucked around with? I don't know. I just raised that question. Why should I believe them? Unless I know exactly how the question is phrased and what it's about. Okay, so in 1972, we had a thing called the silent majority. And they turned out big to vote for Richard Nixon. I've mentioned that before. But this so-called silent majority, I think there's a big silent majority out there right now. And sometimes not so silent. There's a lot of us that are openly love our president. But then there's others who are quiet about it. They're just distressed about what's happening. And if they're paying attention at all, I mean, I think I've heard some people say, well, maybe they think if they vote for Biden, it'll go away. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? No way. Biden right now is kind of an empty suit. I say kind of an empty suit because there's a lot of talk about will he debate, because they're trying to find a way for him not to debate because of his obvious cognitive decline. But it's just a thought I have. I don't know if it's true or if it will come out this way. But my sense of Joe Biden is he wants to debate. You notice when he gets out there and talks, he doesn't do it reluctantly. His whole life has been about politics. So he wants to say things. He wants to talk. Come on, man. He wants to do it. And he's been through enough presidential campaigns and been around. He would think it's weird that he's not debating. Because remember, when you have cognitive decline, the person doesn't necessarily know it. So he could have all these people saying, we don't think you should debate. And he'll be like, come on, man, I could beat him. I mean, he can't be totally controlled. Now, policy-wise, I think he can be controlled because I don't think he kind of follows everything that's going on. But in terms of politics, he wants to get out there. He thinks he's good. He thinks he knows how to connect to people. And his cognitive decline doesn't let him see that he has cognitive decline. I mean, haven't you noticed that with people who are older? You know, they think they can still drive. And kids have all kinds of trouble getting their parents to not drive when they're clearly not capable. So I don't think he can always be controlled. Like, remember when he had the press conference just recently? His handlers told him who to call on. You know, very friendly people in the audience, the press. And so he's just like, well, they told me I'm supposed to call on these people. He's not even like smart enough to play the game. He's just telling people. And that's kind of one of the things that makes him a little bit likable is he just like, well, they told me I'm supposed to do this. He doesn't know that he's not supposed to say it. So my own thought is that'd be interesting. I'm kind of curious if he will not debate. Because I don't think he'll want to debate. Let's just see what happens. So one of the things I would like to say, because I'm not immune to feeling upset about all this. I mean, and that's one of the things that concerns me because I don't want to talk and be discouraging, but I have different parts of my brain operating. I think most of us do. So you might have a logical part that can say, okay, this, that, whatever. But then you have other parts that might take over late at night or when you think, ooh, what if? Ooh, and there's a fear there. And I see that with a lot of people. And I see it with myself. So what I'd like to encourage myself and all of you is to remember that life is short, that there will always be something to worry about in the outside world that you cannot control. And notice what sets you off. So for example, I've learned that I have to be careful what I watch late at night before I go to sleep, because it will make its way into my dreams, and I'll wake up in the middle of the night going, oh my God, you know, I'm thinking about the pole or something else. So I encourage you to find out how much you can take and do your part, and then let it go. I mean, we all need to do our part. We can't be passive in this battle. So don't be passive, do your part, but figure out what you can do and what you can't. Now, let me talk a little bit about masks. You know, here in Santa Monica, Los Angeles, when I go to the park where I walk and run almost every day, there are big signs that say masks required. So I think there's a lot of people that think masks are required. Well, I've been listening to Peggy Hall, Hall, The Healthy American, and she's actually looked into what these requirements are actually legally. And it turns out, like with Gavin Newsom, our governor, that there's really no law to back this up. Think of it as guidance. But what happens is the newspapers, LA Times, Yahoo News, they then say it's required. And so people get the idea that you could be arrested or anything else, but you really can't. So there's now a new big sign that says masks required. So I notice, I don't know, maybe half the people in the park have the masks on, but half don't. So I was walking by and I saw parked Santa Monica police, and I was kind of curious if they'd talk to me, because I'd want to talk to them and go, well, this is actually just guidance. I'd be respectful. I kind of feel for the cops now. But I would ask them, like, what is this? Would this be a citation? You know, I would just have a talk. Nothing. And then the next day, there were like 6 of them sitting on there's like a picnic table. And I'm literally going right past them. Literally going right past them. Most of them had masks on. They were sitting there, and I kind of just look and sort of smile and keep going. Not saying a word. There's all these big signs. Masks required. Did they say anything? Did they look at me? Nothing. And when I came back, I saw them, at least half of them, I didn't really make a good count because there were about 6 of them there, didn't even have their masks on. So they weren't following it. So I think it sends a good message when you don't wear a mask, because then you are saying to other people, hey, you don't have to wear a mask. Because I know occasionally people will look, and I like it when the little kids who are wearing masks see me, because I just think, oh, these poor kids. Because first of all, you're not getting a lot of oxygen, maybe 17%. So instead of your usual 21%, it's in the ambient air. So it's just not good. I want to say something, because again, we all do what we can do. I so love what my niece Lindsay is doing with her 3 children. She has been a school teacher, so she knows how to teach, and she can do homeschooling, although she's never done it. But she will homeschool her kids. But she's told the local school, and I think she's gotten some of her other friends to do the same, that she will not ever have her kids wear masks. And she won't subject them to an environment where the teacher's wearing a mask too, or there's social distancing and all those rules. She just won't go. And as soon as she'll only send her kids to school when it gets back to normal. And see, that's the way we fight back. Because if parents, let's say hypothetically, parents everywhere could do that. Not everybody can, but let's say they could. Because apparently it's very different. I learned from her that when they're doing the online classes, it's not as good as like the homeschooling classes. It's very hard for the kids to actually learn that way. They don't really like it. And I talked to my grand nephew and asked him. I said, well, what do you think about it? And he goes, well, it's hard. Some of those classes, he has a difficult time doing them online. He doesn't learn as much as he does in class, and so it's just better to do it a completely different way. But I love that Lindsay just said I'm not subjecting my kids to that, and I love how she is not living her life in fear. So she wanted to take a trip to the beach this weekend with her kids. And she had some girlfriend. They were going to stay at her house, and she was all scared about the coronavirus. So they couldn't stay there. So she got a hotel. In other words, she didn't say, well, I guess I'm not going to go. No, they're going to do what they're going to do. And I just so admire that. But that's what we have to do. Each person in their own way needs to do something. Now, I admire those people who can go into stores and go into places and not wear a mask. That doesn't suit me. I mean, I'll do it outside because it's just so ridiculous. But it would be hard for me personally to do that battle in a store. I just couldn't do it. So what I do is I just make a big show of, like, I touch my mask, I move it around, and then I dramatically throw it off when I leave. Or I'll say something like, I hate these masks, or whatever. But everybody should do what they can do, okay? And I've had two people who basically, agree with me on masks and everything, tell me, I don't think they thought it through. They said something like, well, if I've been exposed to somebody who had the COVID or whatever, I would tell you. And I said, why would you tell me? Don't do that. You're playing their game. This whole idea that some person, it's so ridiculous. The chain, like, somebody who tested positive, and then they do you, and they know you, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. And if they ever try to do the contact tracing, just don't, you could probably get harassed if you don't comply, but you can just be, I don't think so, I don't remember who I saw, figure out a way, have a plan. I find it helps if you just have a plan. Like, have a plan if somebody accosts you for not wearing a mask outside. Just something that you're going to say. Just have something to say, because if you're a sensitive soul, it can catch you off guard, and it can kind of ruin your day a little bit if somebody is rude like that. And that's how they're trying to control us, because they don't have a law to back them up. So they're relying on social pressure. But I'm not noticing that. I've actually only had two people at the park ever say anything. And the last one was quite some time ago. And both times I reacted. No, three people. Both times I reacted pretty strongly. Like, don't you try to tell me what to do kind of thing. And what's wrong with you? Blah, blah, blah. But I just didn't like it. I don't like it. So, but I find if you have a plan, it's better. So I had my carpet cleaned the other day, so the guys come with the mask. I said, oh, no, this is a no mask zone. Can't wear masks in this house. Of course, they were really happy about that. And, I do things like that. I just do what I can do. And we have to fight this on multiple fronts. And just keep doing it. Now, here's something else I'd like to say. And that's about the New York Times. Because one of the things that bothers me is why do we report what the New York Times says? Why do we let them set the agenda? Like, they'll say, oh, the Russians try to pay to have the Taliban kill American soldiers, and they got that from somebody, and yet that wasn't corroborated intelligence. And yet we have to we on the news keep answering their questions like it's valid. So I think what's happened is the New York Times in the past had a very high reputation. It was called the Gray Lady. It was like the place to work. But it's really gone downhill. But one of the things that can happen when that happens is it's kind of like a flywheel continuing to turn after the power is turned off. People still think it takes a while for that to really sink in. And I'll give you an example. And I use this to my advantage. When I went to work at RAND, the RAND was a think tank in Santa Monica after I got my second master's degree. But anyway, it was considered a very prestigious place to work. And this was my favorite report. Got a lot of play with this. This is before direct broadcast television took off. I worked with an economist, and I, as an engineer, I wrote all the technical stuff about direct broadcast satellites. It was really good. It was really good because one of the things that we did was I had to read all his economic analysis, and he had to read all my engineering analysis, and we made it clear to each one of us. So if there was something we didn't understand. So it was very readable, and I was very proud of this. But anyway, this got a lot of play because it turned out to be correct. That at that time there was a lot of discussion. This was in 1990. There was a lot of discussion as to whether direct broadcast satellites could ever be a competitive alternative to cable TV, because there was a lot of talk about regulating cable TV. Anyway, it was a good report. But my point was that in the 1950s, RAND did some major studies for the Air Force and other places, and it had a tremendous reputation. Well, you don't really hear much about RAND today. But when I was there, in 1989, 1990, I was riding on that good reputation of RAND. So it was a prestigious place to work. It was great to have the business card. I worked at RAND, blah, blah, blah. So I'm thinking that could be happening with some of these mainstream media, like the Washington Post, the New York Times. They're riding on their history. They're riding that good reputation. But their reputation now, they really put out junk. Junk. So why we pay attention to what they say, we're still going with that. Okay, here's another thing, which I think we're doing, we conservatives. We have to learn to attack the attackers. Put them on the defensive. I just thought of this today because I thought about like this Manhattan DA Cyrus Vance in New York. Well, now he's getting attacked. You know, he's the one that wanted to get Trump's tax returns, which that's not going to be a problem because nobody will see it before November, apparently. But he's starting to come, because some of the sort of shady things that he's done, he's starting to get attacked for that. Take someone like Ilhan Omar. Would anybody be paying attention to her? Because she's in the limelight attacking. Now they're finding out, okay, she gave all this money to her husband from her campaign staff. She's done this, she's done that. In other words, if you are really going to go after conservatives, pretty much everybody has some kind of skeleton in their closet. You do that, we're going to find your skeleton and we're going to attack you. We're going to put you on the defensive. No more Ms. Nice Gal, Mr. Nice Guy. No more. Not going to do it. That's a good strategy politically. Couple more things. There's a lot of good stuff coming out about different treatments for COVID. I'm not worried about COVID. As I've told you before, there's weird stuff going on here. We have got to learn to not be afraid of it. Oh, I know. This is a great book. I learned a lot from Gilbert Welch. First, he had written a book called Should You Be Tested for Cancer? Maybe Not, and Here's Why. I highly recommend you read this book. It's very simple. He talks about the worried well, but he talks a lot about, he was the author of Overdiagnosed, but it's about people being afraid of, you go looking for trouble and you get people scared. But and so I'm steeped in this, definitely steeped in this, and it's influenced me greatly in terms of my own health care, which is good, by the way, but because I don't do too much, you can really muck up your health by doing too much testing, too much this, too much that. But one of the things I find really fascinating about this coronavirus is people aren't doing a lot of this stuff. It's like they've taken all of their healthcare worries and put them into the coronavirus. It's like that's all they're thinking about. So, there's a lot of talk, they're not getting their tests, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. Well, to tell you the truth, I don't think it's going to hurt. I think all those cancer screenings have just led to way too much overtreatment, problems that never needed to happen. Because if you start looking for stuff, particularly when the testing gets to be really good, and you can find little nodules and things that we never knew about before, and little cancers that in the past your body would take care of, but now they think, we got to catch it, we got to treat it, and they just create all these problems for people. It makes me wonder. Now, this is just me thinking. I don't have any evidence for this. But it makes me wonder about everybody getting tested. What does it mean when you're tested and you're shown to have the coronavirus, but you are asymptomatic? What does that mean? Because we've never tested this many people. I mean, does that mean that, let's say during cold season, that if for some reason we had a test for a cold, we could find out that many people had the cold but didn't have any symptoms? I remember when I was studying about the immune system and how it works, I remember reading that, for example, if I'm exposed to someone who's sick, it talked about how your immune system will fight it, and many times it will fight it below the surface of your awareness. You won't even know your body's doing it, but it's building these antibodies, it's fighting it. And so your immune system is kicked into gear, it's working hard, but you never actually get sick. And I remember after I read that, I thought, so that's another reason to listen to your body. So if there's like a day when you think, I just need a little more sleep, or I'm not that energetic, maybe that's your body fighting something. And so you should just take a little extra care. Don't push yourself so hard that day, because your immune system is kicked into high gear and you don't know it. Well, is that what is happening with these tests? I mean, are we testing something that we've just never seen before? Because when have we ever had widespread testing for something like this, for a seasonal illness, say? I don't think we've ever done it. It's kind of like, when they started testing, finding, oh my God, people have nodules, people have this, and we got to take care of it. It's like, that's what's happened in terms of testing. You can see things you couldn't see before, and you think it's a problem, but actually it's not. So I just raise that as a question in my own mind, because if you're asymptomatic, even if you have it, in my mind, you don't have it. Because maybe we're asymptomatic for a lot of different things that our immune system is fighting all the time. Could be a flu, could be cold, all those things. I don't get colds anymore. I don't get the flu. Knock on wood, I don't have any wood here, but I haven't gotten that a lot. And I think, like I said, I think it's because of my very high vitamin D intake and very high vitamin D levels. It's like 84, which is high, but I think it's important. So I kind of think that might be the reason I don't get sick. but for whatever reason. That doesn't mean if I wasn't tested for those things, the flu, the cold, maybe it would show that I'm asymptomatic, but I actually have it. So those are just things to think about, because we have to navigate this, okay? Things are changing, things are going on. I never realized, I was always concerned about medical tyranny, if you will, but I never realized that that could be the route for people to try to take away our rights as citizens. This is new for me, to think of it this way. So think about being nimble, how you're going to do it, but don't get depressed, okay? Life has changed, things change, but you can do it, okay? We are strong, we're emotionally healthy. The other side is sick. For the most part, there's something, they're emotionally, something's wrong. And even if, and I'm not saying this will happen, even if Donald Trump, let's say worst case, I always like to go to worst case to see how do I deal with that. Worst case, Donald Trump lost. They took over, the Democrats, both houses of Congress. I mean, just nightmare scenario, okay? Well, we'll figure out what to do. There's a lot of us. We'll form underground networks. We'll do stuff, okay? We'll figure it out. It takes a while for people to figure out how to fight things, okay? But we will, okay? So it's not over. Now, he's going to win, but we don't put it on one person. It's up to us. We will save this country. We still got the Constitution, okay? That's not going away. We still got our founding documents. We'll build on that. We will win. And on that happy note, stay upbeat. Don't let yourself get too upset. This is an ongoing battle, but we will win it. Okay? Talk to you next week.